We are firing up the USS Postshow, episode 2, Far From Home. Hello, everyone. It's Flobo Boyce, and this is Commander's Log. But I'm not alone. I need my captain. I need the man that can steer us through the stars and cosmos with such a wit and such a power of leadership that he's an inspiration to many, many others. Give it up for the man himself, John. Bye-bye.
You're too kind. You're too kind, Flobo Boyce. You are too kind, my friend.
How you doing?
I always wanted to do like the comedy version of Star Trek, and then the Orville came out, and I was like, oh, I wanted to be the bad starship captain, but Seth MacFarlane's doing a pretty good job of it.
If you did a film or like a stage play, I will wear 2 masks to see it. That's how entertaining I would be. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. This show is presented by Geek Renaissance, and we're broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. People are still on Periscope. And Twitch. Yes, if you're on Twitter, you can actually see this live, which is pretty rad. Episode 2 was another big one, as long as the week before, 53 minutes. Before we get into the episode and all that stuff, we're talking about Jonathan Frakes, Riker. And it seems like he just saves the day a lot, whether it's Picard or lower decks. Or
yeah, man.
He's
come out of nowhere. Like for fandom for the longest time, he was just like the weird stud guy.
I wouldn't know. I was going to say before we started the show, I was like, I didn't watch Star Trek till very, very late. So Jonathan Frakes is the fact or fiction beyond belief guy. And so I'm like, why does everyone care about him?
That's so funny. That is so funny.
Yeah.
His wife. Okay. I didn't research any of this anecdote. He was married to a gal who was, I believe she played Laura from Luke and Laura of General Hospital fame.
Oh.
And I don't know if Frakes himself did soap operas, but she was obviously the queen for like all of the 80s. And she was cute. Young
Riker domesticated. That's crazy, man.
I mean, Riker's like the guy, he's like, I remember when I first was watching the show, I thought, well, it's really interesting. Okay, so this is the next generation. It's really interesting that the captain is not the swashbuckling, great hair, handsome, big chested guy.
Yeah.
They've got number 1 for that. I thought that was a really interesting dichotomy that they cut they cut the Captain Kirk archetype into 2.
Yeah.
But Frakes never had the impact that Patrick Stewart had, obviously. And really, you could kind of go down the line. Like he didn't have the impact that Michael Dorn had. He didn't have the impact that Brent Spiner had, or that even Sirtis, the counselor, had.
Mm-hmm.
They're all, very solid characters, and he was, or they were characters that constantly opened up like a flower, and he was like this sort of like granite statue, didn't change a lot. They would add characteristics to him that were interesting, but
like a beard.
The beard is so funny, but what I loved about that is there is a naval tradition of beards, and Star Trek, the original Star Trek, was very much about this is a naval vehicle.
Yeah.
Granted, it's science and exploration, but still the Starfleet was a military, structure with captains and admirals and the like. And I always found it interesting that they would put a little bit of that sailor life into being on a ship. They would do that a lot on Next Generation, especially in the movies where they had a budget. And,
that was really the first impression I got with TNG, going from this we're flying through space to like welcome to the room, belay that order. So you head, like stand down. You're like, oh man, this sounds kind of boring. And I guess what I could understand back in the 70s or late 80s, I guess, where everyone was kind of like, it's not the same, because it was so different. But it kind of comes with its own, like, what, season 3? You're like, okay, cool,
That is always the best bet. A show really isn't what the show is going to be in Star Trek until season 3. However, bringing us right back to square one with this show, That is not true of Star Trek Discovery. They hit the ground running on that show.
I totally agree. Episode 2, season 3, which was so clever. I liked it. This is my overall thoughts of the show, of the episode, was, okay, we had Burnham and her adventure, and we were kind of wondering in a prediction segment, oh man, when are they going to meet? And I guess I assumed that the talk of the time displacement would be kind of like something to add the stakes artificially, but no. The show wisely picked we learn that later on, but a year in the future for this entire Discovery crew trying to make sense of the future with even less information, because they didn't have a Cleveland Booker. They were just like, okay, things are down. There's some gnarly ice outside. let's make this work. So what are your thoughts of the show, of this episode of Star Trek Discovery?
This show is so interesting because what you have, like when you look back at Star Trek Next Generation, you've got the crew as family, the crew as a unit, the crew as individuals. And that's great. Like the A story of a Next Generation episode might go, okay, it's about Riker this time, but there's always other crewmates having stories in the thing. And that's what we got in this episode. We go right to Discovery. We're dealing with all of the crew members. They all get some good time, screen time. I'm sure the communications officer guy would argue with me, but but the fact that we get to see everybody in action doing what they do, they're so good at what they do. This is what makes a show work.
Yeah, I was not wondering or concerned about it, but I know in the first season, and again, I have to keep reiterating, this is my first entry point to this whole universe. It didn't bother me as much that the first season really was the story of one person, because like in a video game, they have all the powers that are stripped away, and then they have to work their way up. But towards the end of the first season, especially the second season, we're seeing a lot more characterization of the crew, and I am not sure if that was intentional, or if they're kind of like, well, we have these moving parts here, let's give them kind of backstory. But it was kind of cool to see what their strengths were for the bridge crew without a commander there, because Saru has to be acting captain, like Bryce or Reese or Owe. I always get a name wrong. Oweku or Detmer.
Man, you're better than I am. Navigator Beautiful Hair is my.
Like trademark or whatever.
I just learned Detmer's name for this episode. I was like, who's the haunted redhead who isn't Tilly?
Oh yeah,
that's how I identified Detmer. Am I jumping too much to go? What do you think the deal is with Detmer?
Man, look, it's weird, because if anything, I felt like she was fighting for her life.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, maybe it was kind of a psychological thing, because she looked okay. She got picked up by sick bay. She was great. But she did hit her, I guess, is it an augmentation? Maybe it is an augmentation, or maybe it's kind of a prosthetic. So I'm not sure if that's relating it to it. Star Trek Discovery does play with the psychological damage a little bit more than other shows, because they have the leeway, right? The cool effects, the sound things. Remember Tilly last season with their dead friend? So I hope it's something they can resolve. But you know what? It's cool. Give Detmer something layered, because ever since her first bit of conflict in season 1, why she didn't talk to Michael Burnham, she really was just kind of there,
Right. Yeah. I mean, she lost an eye. She had to have a replaced eye. She's got that outward, augment, that mechanical thing, but we don't think that like controls in there, right? This isn't like the cyber girl from season 2.
Oh
right?
man, if control is in there, this whole season is like moot.
If
control shows up, it's like no.
Please tell me that like controls on blocks for a while at least, because I always loved that Detmer was still resentful. Like, why wouldn't she be towards Michael Burnham for the accident that had taken away like half her head?
That's actually something that ticks me off of the show. The one few things, because it kind of she was mad and she kind of got over it, and then it was like
I kind of buy it, because when when you're in a unit and you go through some stuff, like even the people you don't like are still kind of valuable.
Man, look, I'm gonna tell you a story. I'm gonna tell you a story, and you're probably gonna be like, it's different when it revolves around women. But I remember when I was in film school, when I was young and I was spry, and I was like, oh boy, all the degrees. I had this crush on this girl who was a cinematographer student that needed help with like all like the camera stuff, like all this carrying stuff around. And I was a lot heavier there, didn't have the stamina, but I was like, I gotta do it because on my dumb logic, if I help a girl out, she'll like me. Not true. Anyway, I go to the set, and it's in a cemetery, and I try to climb up into a moving truck, which where all the gear was, and I slipped, and the space of between my kneecap and my shin like hit the side of it, and I have like a gash that's 1.5 inches wide, and even though I can say I'm over it, I look at that every day and go, that's what happens when you think you'll get over something. So I don't know, John. Maybe she's so mad. I don't know.
That's a good example, man. That's a good example. There was a really attractive girl in high school. I loaned her a pen. She threw a pencil. She threw the pencil back at me. She was like, hey, thanks for the pencil. She threw it at me, which, in my mind of minds, I go, you should have gone, hey, idiot, why are you throwing a pencil? But she was hot. So I was like, oh, I'll catch the pencil. And I caught it wrong. I caught it so that it hit my tummy and it pierced my elbow. And I still have that.
Oh, man.
That's graphite. That's graphite.
So are you on it too?
I look at that every day and I go, that's what a pretty smile can do to you.
Yeah.
Be careful. I know just what you're saying.
And Deborah gave her an eye.
Right.
So we're landing on this planet, man. And there's the Strange New Worlds. I said it. Thing going on, but there's also the ticking time bomb. Communications are out. They're learning about dilithium. And the coolest swerve I thought was awesome was parasitic ice. That to me, it trips me out. I can never get a Bahama sea breeze at a bar anymore. I'm allowed outside again. You know what I'm saying? Like microbes and ice that eat things. That's disgusting.
Yeah. Once you realize your villain is parasitic ice, it just becomes just get out of there. Like I was so anxious this episode.
Yeah.
Because parasitic ice, that's a bad enemy, man. You don't want that.
Nope. Because it could have gone a different direction. Because, ice is a state of matter, right? What if it melted inside? What if it became like parasitic water? It was just the whole thing that had me going.
Yeah.
But before we get to our main adventure on the planet, I want to talk to you about my man, #Ganglia Gang, Mr. Saru, who is all kinds of badass this season. I mean, he's got like balls of steel now, and it's kind of interesting to see how would an assertive Saru respond to situations, especially with Filippo Giorgio, who's along for the ride. Thoughts about my man Saru, Giorgio, and that.
Yeah. The great thing about Saru right now is he is the same guy he was before. He's still very intelligent and has very high standards of behavior, and but at the same time, he's no longer the prey. He can be predator as well. And when the S word goes down, when the poop goes down, man, what was up with this new ganglia he has?
No idea.
Freaking missiles. They pop out. Spoiler alert. They pop out, they point, and then they shoot. That was crazy. His head is a gun, Flobo. His head's a gun, man.
No, I can't unsee that.
You can never unsee it. The head. Yeah, I mean, seriously. You got your hands up and still, whoop. You can still shoot your way out.
Body a weapon. Whew.
So I'm watching, as I was telling you when we were having our little talk right before the show, and folks, we worked so hard preparing these shows.
Oh yeah,
and by
absolutely.
we I mean Flobo.
It's like half an hour work tops. I put down things like, "Damn, you hit him pretty hard," and that was a cool line. It's just there's no Scotch real.
I'm telling you, this episode in its one thing I always loved about Deep Space Nine was Gene Roddenberry had said, "Oh, and by the way, remind me that there's an Easter egg in this one that I wanna go to."
You got it.
Gene Roddenberry had his pitch to CBS for the original Star Trek was it's wagon train in space. And so they're always traveling, they're going new places, blah, blah, blah. There were many other kinds of Western shows, and one of them was like Gunsmoke, which is the story of the town, Laramie, the story of the town in the Old West. And that's what Deep Space Nine was supposed to be. Here's an outpost out on the edge of a frontier. We don't know what's coming in. This is pretty much the first 3 seasons of Deep Space Nine are like this. We don't know what's coming to us through this wormhole from the Delta Quadrant. We don't know what to do about these pre-existing indigenous people in this area. We have to like settle and help them settle their problems. Big challenge, very interesting. And yet we even got more Western in this episode. They actually had, as they call them, batwing doors. You're like,
oh, the saloon, right, duh. I would put it that way, sure.
Right? And then they go in, and what does everybody do? I mean, granted, there isn't a player piano that suddenly, and then everyone turns and looks, but it was close, and everyone's like going for their guns, and there's all this tension, and it's a saloon. It was very cool. I really dug this.
So on a quest to fix their comms, you got Saru hanging out with Tilly, who is so Tilly. Hashtag Tilly brand. Being the audience surrogate in the future. Dope.
Yep.
And they come across like all the Cordians of a colony. I had not seen them before any other Star Trek media. Are they new for this season, you think?
As far as I know, they're new.
Right.
Yeah, as far as I know, they're quite new. And I think I think the take on the future has a lot to do with this isn't like a federation bringing together races. This is like the sort of cruel capitalism of the future brings together Andorians and Orions and all these different, we're going to meet a few different races because in this very toxic future, certain species or certain races are rising up higher in profile than others. We haven't seen a lot of humans, not a lot.
Allow me to hit from this imaginary bowl, right? So we live in a future now where we're defining who is on top and who's on bottom, very much parallel to our own. I mean, there are cultures that mix and match. Them are now separate, strange bedfellows and all that. I know they always say Star Trek is a microcosm, it's not a parallel look of what our society is. But I do think it's interesting because about the story of I'm going to get his name right, Zareth?
Yeah,
Zareth.
Played by Jake Weber.
Yeah, fantastic. Hashtag Weber gang. Having this like rogue courier getting involved to basically cut off the trading and have a shakedown, which is very similar to my hometown, New York, where there were different outfits. Organized crime, usually the most popular ones were the Sicilian mob, but there was also Chinese mob, there was also the Mexican mob, there was also the Filipino mob that would go to neighborhoods and say protection money. Hey, I'm covering your trade in and out. You got to pay me what you need. I thought it was kind of a cool throwback to that. What's up, my man? Will 5 Stud for checking the show. Appreciate it.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah.
I definitely see this sort of lawless, again, it's sort of an old West kind of a view of the world. And this is that untamed humanity. This is Deadwood. This is where the only law is might. And again, we get to see, this is a recap show, so I'm not spoiling anything for anybody.
Show's been out for like 18 hours. You're good.
I just love that once again we get at the end of an episode these people who are part of the future saying, so and so always believed in the Federation, always thought the Federation would come. Yeah. And that once again, I know I did it last week. I'm doing it again. I started crying like a baby.
Yeah.
Because
why?
I love the Federation. I have always thought the Federation was this great, wonderful place. And I know there are problems. There have always been problems. I understand with the Federation. And there are colonizer problems, and there are, damage that the Federation does. The Federation, it overreach. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I understand that's baked in, and those are bad things, and we must always improve. But I did always love this Federation of Planets idea, and that there was honor. And not Klingon honor, which is,
all hail to Kuvma.
We hack at each other with batleths, and makes us good people.
What's he doing? He's ascending. Dang. Pass.
But just the sense, as we talked about last week, the sense of chivalry, the sense of might for right. And that this is a future that lacks honor. It lacks protection. It lacks empathy. And these are all things that, especially this version of the Federation, can provide.
Right.
I hate to get too much into the weeds here, but
allow me to go into the weeds with you. I'm going to cut you off here because I'm going to be cynical, Sally.
Oh,
Steven,
go.
Whatever. And I had my Superman reference last week, and I have one for you this week. There was one of the greatest Superman comics of all time, which was adapted to Superman versus the Elite, was What is Wrong with Truth, Justice, the American Way? We as comic fans have looked at Superman and said, look, he is cool for a time, but he's not real. He's overpowered. This guy is not really I like my superheroes with conflicts and morals. Give me Wolverine. Give me Jean Grey.
Right.
It's almost like wrong to be ideal. That happens with Tom Brady. That happens with John Cena. Everyone loves a winner until they start winning too much. Now I ask you this, as a long-term fan of Star Trek and seeing the Federation being dragged for how dare they put their name and stamp on this Andromeda ripoff or this Michael Burnham ripoff, is there still a spot for Discovery to be accepted by the most naysayers of fans, no matter how much hope comes on these shows? Or is it kind of like either you're in now or you'll never be in? Sorry, the world has changed.
That's such a good question. Because
I'm a journalist. That's what I do. Hey.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. There's so I was born in the 60s. I'll be very real. 1963.
I don't believe it though.
God bless. But yeah, I mean, I go way back with it. And there were two shows that I loved as a kid. Did you ever see Wild Wild West?
Yeah.
So Wild Wild West always had, like, he's a spy. He gets his, he gets his case that he's on. He tries to go in. He has to fight like 15 guys. There's a girl. He has almost romantic stuff with the girl, the villain. Like, it always followed this pattern. Well, the original Star Trek was pretty similar. There were a lot of big brawls. There was a lot of, like, hot chick, making eyes at Kirk. Should he trust her? There's a lot of, like, old stuff to how these stories were told way back in the day. And part of that created a really male oriented fan base. It was a fairly macho fan base, which is hilarious because almost everybody agrees that Star Trek fans are not macho, present company excluded.
Oh, thank you.
But I mean, it was always especially once Next Generation came around, we were looking at a very, and I'm going to use the words because I do believe that politics actually affect our art a lot. And so the version of Star Trek was always progressive. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry if people are, I hate communists or whatever. I'm sorry if they're all upset by that. But the fact is, equality is guaranteed in the Federation. Opportunity is guaranteed. People are not held back unless there's a reason why they are. People are not held back that often by, their birth. We have so many unusual. We have on Next Generation, we have an officer who is a synthetic life form. We have an officer who is a Klingon raised by humans. We have Tasha Yar, who was badass.
I'm going to stop you just real quick. I want to tell you people out there, all you Star Trek fans, did not warn me about Tasha Yar because I was like, wow, she's pretty cool. Swerve, but continue. I'm just mad. I'm mad about that.
There are a lot of experiments being done, and Tasha Yar was from a dystopian world where she pretty much grew up running from rape gangs. They used the word. True. They came out and said rape gangs. And so just this whole idea of everybody comes from somewhere different. Everybody is different. We're all kind of accepted. We can all find a place in the Federation. This is very much what nerds like me, I don't think of you as a nerd, Flobo, but totally I think you benefit from this too. You do have a really nice.
That's a Mr. Met and an XFL football, but okay.
Oh, that's an XFL football.
Yeah, the relaunch.
Just in case anyone thinks you're really macho, right. It's an F. Yeah, I mean, look, nerds get elevated by Star Trek. So the fact that somebody would be like, I can't believe girl bosses are all over Star Trek. Well, bro, you're not going to have a good time. Yeah. That's not the future. If you can't see past, having mostly women on the bridge right now. Am I right about that? I mean,
I guess the root doesn't count. I guess the root would be, but yeah, you got Detmer, you have Nielsen, you have Cation. Wait, I'm gonna get this right. Owusekon. That's 3, and then I don't know if you count Nan because she's like a security officer. I guess.
Right.
That's 4.
Is
compared
Tilly,
to Reese, Bryce. No, Tilly's on the bridge. She's 5.
She's not routine. Well, she's an ensign now. Is she?
She's an ensign, and she was in the captain's program in season 2.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that's still going.
Right. Somebody pointed this out about some idiot in one of the crappy Star Trek Facebook groups I'm in said there were no cishet white men in the first episode of season 3.
Who's tracking that? There was 2 people.
you know who's tracking that. You know who's tracking that.
It wasn't me, y'all.
It wasn't me either.
Yeah.
Because to me, and I hate to be such a Pollyanna about this, but I was like, but like, don't humans count? Like,
right.
Aren't you going like, well, yeah, there's not a lot of humans in that first episode, but that's who I'm always looking for.
Yeah,
who are the humans?
That's crazy. I don't understand someone sit there and be like, aha, 30 minutes without a white person or a cisgendered or like, okay. That's not how representation works. But,
exactly. That's how representation works. Exactly.
Now, I'll admit I'll do the opposite for minorities. I am not above doing that. I'd be like, hey, a black guy. I totally do that all the time.
But. That's so funny. I think I'm kind of the same way because I always want to see the variety, it's I mean, first off, the first 2 seasons are all they're at a time that we kind of recognize. They're pre the original Star Trek. So we kind of know what that looks like. And to get this very different version of it, well, they had this very United Nations kind of enterprise in the original Star Trek. But it was very white guy military, white guy American military, really.
Oh, yeah.
And we're just getting away from that. We're going to the outer reaches of how diversity works in Star Trek, and that's a great thing. But I was kind of like amazed that somebody was complaining,
right?
And that it was like, do you seriously think white guys aren't going to show up for a while? Like, are you seriously missing the white guys? Because I'm telling you, we're getting. We got Andorians and we got Orions right off the bat. Oh, and here's another thing I forgot to mention that somebody had mentioned in one of those groups. There was a Morn. in the first episode. Do you remember Morn from Deep Space Nine?
It doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, there's a guy in Quark's bar.
Yeah.
Always the same guy. And he looks like a Muppet. And he's always in the background, never says anything.
Okay, yeah.
He's always drinking. And he had been established as Morn, which is, switch around the letters. It's Norm from Cheers.
Got it. Yeah.
So that was the Easter egg back then. And the fact that in this 920 years in the future,
930 years in the future,
930, right? We see Andorians, we recognize them, and Orions. Hadn't seen a ton of Orions, but always glad to see more Orions. But to see another Morn, he was the only one.
Yeah.
The one from Deep Space Nine. So to see another one in the future, I popped hard, as we say in wrestling.
That's an insider term. We don't know about that.
Yeah. As we say in wrestling, that got a pop out of me. I popped.
I popped hard. So about progressive nature, I think it's a very cool way to look at it. I always have my fandom for the Green Lantern Corps for that reason, because if you are without fear or if you're courageous, you get that ring. But
Right.
Let's talk about the story in space between Stamets and Kluber, man. Like, here is something that's so progressive. And now Jet Reno's in the mix. I don't know about you, man, but Tig Notaro's Jet Reno with Paul Stamets, that is a sitcom waiting to happen. We just like ragged her from her chair. You know what I'm saying? Like, she's just so smooth, like the perfect balance of being jaded, but like being earnest. Man, I love that whole cottage storyline, I guess the C plot, if you will, of this episode.
Yeah, which was interesting. This was one of those we don't like each other, but we're working together things.
Yeah.
And like, you just can't help but I'm such a geek. I'm such a fan. I mean,
nerd.
You're a stand-up comedian as well. So when you see Tig Notaro doing something, it's kind of like, wow, Tig Notaro, man, she's a comic. She was, I mean, a lot of people could look at her acting and say, yeah, she's still a comic.
Fair enough, but she had a lot of exposition today. Like,
she did. Yeah. No, there was a lot going on there, which was interesting. Also, the fact that the couple, the doctor,
Stamets and Kluber, Hugh Kluber. Sidebar, every time someone from Star Trek fandom tells me Hugh, that's the Hugh I think about all the time. And I'm always confused because there's another Hugh that was in Picard.
That's right. And the Hugh that was in Picard was from Hugh that had been in The Next Generation.
Right.
So that's a big throwback to know who that Hugh is.
That's my Hugh with Hugh Kluber. That's
and honestly, one of the great things that I've learned from Pete Buttigieg and his husband Chasen is when you really get used to a same-sex couple, you just see that they're just a couple. When you get past what we had been told as kids, what was weird or what was unusual, you just get past that, and then you're just like, oh, I'm so glad they're getting along again.
Yeah. I will say this though. There's a moment there, and look, you can flame me if you want, but like when Hugh wakes up Stamets and says, basically, we need your biobed, which is pretty funny. And he kisses him, you're like, bro, millennium morning breath. Like, I would not do that at all. Like a hug, a high five. You know what I mean? Like, dude, that's the first thing I was thinking about. But
the
to your
first
point,
thing you think of is the dragon breath.
Right. But to your point, it wasn't like, oh, a dude's kissing a dude. It was like, oh my gosh, look at the bacteria. I'm weird.
It's funny as a couple of, look, you're still very young, but look, we're a couple of men who grew up in the end of the 20th century.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy to be at that point where it's just like, yeah, those are two people that are in love. So anyway, let's move on. There's nothing special about that. There's nothing dangerous. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing sinful. Granted, I don't belong to any of the societies that think those things, but just as a regular human, here I am going, oh, that's nice. His husband showed up. That's good. And yeah, Tig Notaro, Reno, Jet Reno is such a pill. She reminds me actually so much of the Terran. I got to study these names. Michelle Yeoh's character.
Oh, Philippa Giorgio.
Thank you, Giorgio. She reminds me of her in that like tough chick. She's kind of outside the bubble here, you know?
Yeah.
And
sorry, cut you off.
Oh, there was that one joke where she says something and everybody turns on her and she's like, "Hey, I'm on drugs."
Oh yeah, good job, Bobcat. Bobcat? Like, hey. Or when he goes like, what's your name? I'm like, oh, whatever. I'm Greg or I'm G. And he goes, I already forgot that.
And that brings us back to, please help me remember the Easter egg.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, hazmat over here. And he goes, my name's Gene. And she's like, I've forgotten already.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious because who created all of this?
Eugene Roddenberry.
Yeah. Guy named Gene. And so there's a little, I looked at that as like a little, hey, let's name him Gene. That would be funny.
He's already over it.
Yeah. It's like, shoot, I was watching, of all things, I was watching Iron Man 2 the other night, and they bring in Stan Lee.
I want my boot.
And somebody goes, Stan Lee walks in and somebody goes, have you met Larry King?
Oh, yeah. He was like Hugh Hefner in the first one or something like that.
That's right. I just love that stuff.
I love the Stan Lee cameos. And a little bit of a fun fact, I'm sure it's kind of old news by now, but Tig Notaro's character, Jet Reno, was originally going to be called Denise, where she said, I look more like a jet, like Joan Jett, and it was changed on the behest of Tig Notaro, which is pretty cool. I think she looks more like a jet anyway.
Honestly, in the future, there will be more people named Jet than named Denise. That's just my guess.
Yeah, Denise doesn't seem very futuristic. Like an engineer sounds like, jet propulsion fuel or whatever. But I just love the fact that we're seeing different combinations work together.
Yes.
On the show. Like even Giorgio, when her and Nan go back and forth, and she's like, "What are you doing here?" And she's like, "What are you doing here?" And the fact that Nan is there to honor Arium, which had one of the more like tragic deaths. But I could think in my head that the actress who played both Arium and Nielsen was like, I'm done doing makeup. Just kill me off. So I could just be in regular clothes. Because it was so sad. It was really sad when it happened.
Yes.
But the dynamic between Giorgio and Nana was always cool to see them go back and forth,
Yeah, because they're both really tough chicks. They both really are like command level. And it's very interesting to see the conflicts up on that level. And to remember that, originally Gene Roddenberry didn't want conflicts among the crew. So when you see it done, they put some thought into it. They don't just throw the spaghetti at the wall. They go, this is important for this reason and this reason. And it comes out in the relationship. And I loved that between the two of them because neither one is going to trust the other 100%. And that's how it can be.
And that's how it is with Giorgio. Here's something I thought was interesting, though. Tilly said there was 88 crew members on board. Did everyone agree to go to the future, or did someone wake up like, where are we? What's going on, John?
That's a good point. That's a real good point because she was saying, I'm counting the injured. And for all we know, there are people who are in comas or just lying in beds the whole time. But I thought, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the whole idea behind whoever was on Discovery following the Red Angel, they were all volunteers.
I mean, it was assumed, but only because the one scene of the main crew saying, yeah, Burnham, it's already been done, it's settled. But I guess I didn't think about how many people. It was like 10 people or 15. 80 people. There got to be some people that were there that were eating lunch when someone's like, goes in the future. What?
I just want, from my own weird little perspective, I just want to look at the kitchen staff and just see among the kitchen staff, the dishwasher, I'll go to the uncertain future.
Throw a fast one down.
Someone's going to need to wash your dishes.
Wow, he's a real hero there. Thank you so much for checking in the show. We're still rolling with Star Trek Discovery Episode 2. Remember, this show is brought to you by Geek Renaissance. Check it out, Geek Renaissance on Instagram. Get yourself some nice gifts for a friend, family member, significant other this holiday season. All nerd all the time at Geek Renaissance.
And remember, when gift giving season comes up, it's your Christmases and your Kwanzaas and your Hanukkahs. It's the good stuff. And then, hey, just 1 month later, you got Valentine's Day. You got to think about these things ahead of time. For me, my wife's birthday is on February 12th. So I have this like boom, boom, boom.
I hope you get married the 13th. It's like I just squeeze it in there. So Discovery, man, that last scene was pretty intense. You know, you got the ice coming at you. You're like, oh man, you're gonna overtake it. They're trying. Everything's online. They're going like, okay, we're going up. And I love that moment when the tractor beam comes out. And my man Saru, my boy, Saru, has to make a decision to fight it off, to accept it, to open comms. It was a very layered decision and a very layered performance to Doug Jones, who's under like a foot of makeup. Just your thoughts about, before the discovery of Michael Burnham, just the thoughts about that decision there.
You know, we're seeing a commander, and we all know that's a very important job. And we're seeing a commander who is the acting captain, and he's got to make these snap decisions, and they are never at 100%. So far, they don't have 100% shields, they don't have 100% life support, they don't have 100% weapons, so they're dealing with a really bad hand, and he's got to make these split-second decisions. And I'm just loving how Doug Jones is able to do so much through all that makeup, and to show you the difficulty of the decisions and the silent moments in between his lines. It's incredible that somebody can do that much acting under that much stuff. Yeah. Rene Auberjonois as Odo on Deep Space Nine was my other example of that's a fantastic actor. A guy who can portray so much, literally buried under latex. And with Doug Jones, you'll see it a lot in his head tilts and where he puts his weight. Just as an actor, it's incredible to watch him do that stuff. It's incredible to watch a lot of them. They're really good actors. This is a tremendous actors show. So that moment, I felt it. I felt that fear. I did not assume that the good guys had come to rescue. You just can't assume that in this horrible future. So the fact that Burnham's found them, woo! But I've already looked at some of the previews for next week. So can I? So we're gonna find out that Burnham has been there for a year.
Yeah,
she's been in the future for a year. She became a courier. Just like Book. So she's
somehow.
You got to make a living. Got to make a living in the future. And she has really possibly changed a bit. But we got the thing we needed. And it basically comes from a two-parter at the beginning of this third season where they're separate. And now, thank goodness, they're back together. We get to episode 3, and they'll all be in the same ship again.
Allow me to complain first, though. I want to make a complaint up first. I hate the fact that naming convention's messed up. I hope Is You Part 1 does not lead into Far From Home. Excuse me.
Right. Now, that's interesting, isn't it?
Like, where's Part 2? Is it next season? Who knows? But like, I'm going back to the Green Lantern mythos. My favorite Green Lantern of all time is John Stewart, former Marine, former architect. When he was put in charge of the Corps, he was the most strategic. And so those moments when he has to make a decision on behalf of the entire Corps, I live for that stuff. When I have to do a hard decision, I think about John Stewart. What would John Stewart do? I would say. And there was no wrong answer there. You know what I mean? There was like Paradise. You knew about Zareth's more stronger friends or other conflicting couriers coming after you. Yeah. Like, what do you do? But to say, you know what? If you're gonna die, you're gonna die in space. Like here, that's a very hard decision to make, and that was amazing. Of course, Burnham is back with her hair all did up. Looking all fine. Even Serene's like, damn, girl, you look kind of, don't worry about that. What do you think? I mean, we saw some of the previews. What do you think is going to happen next week? Is it going to be a group mission? Is it going to be some sort of like reconciliation? What do you envision happening in episode 3?
I have the stupidest answer to that's a very intelligent question. I have a very stupid answer to it. And here's what I do. And this is so stupid. I watch the animated credits at the beginning there, and I try to get clues about what's going to happen in the story based on what they're showing us.
Oh, the theme song.
Yeah. Oh God, that theme song's amazing. Oh, it's amazing. So while that's playing and they're showing like the parchment with the drawings on it and stuff, and they come to life. So there are these like robots that have like the Federation symbol on them. Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, are they going to put together some sort of like Space Ranger force of like Federation robots? Or, one of the things I do know is that in the year that she has been working with the couriers, they've been working to get dilithium so they can explore more to try to find more traces of the original Federation. And I can also tell you this, the next episode is called People of Earth.
Part 1. No, I'm just kidding.
And it could be. And then part 2 is, People of Venus. It's entirely possible. They've done it before. But I don't know if we're getting to Earth yet. I know they are going to more Federation stuff, and they are really finding out all that we know about the burn, which changed everything, which destroyed the Federation. So we're in a really interesting spot. And I hope I say that every time we do this show, because honestly, it's the roller coaster. You go up, you go down, you go back up again, you go down. If you're a good storyteller, you can take your audience on a ride, and they have been doing that really well. One of the things I was thinking about today was I think we have to give some thanks to J.J. Abrams for the Chris Pine movies. Because
lens flares, I got you.
Because what I feel like they really did in those movies was hello, Charlene. What they really did in those movies was create the ride, Star Trek, the ride. And it's very adventure-y and action-y and explodey and shooty. And I loved all those things. I love movies for that. So he's normalized that for Star Trek. And it's not quite so many meetings, peace conferences.
Right.
Diplomatic missions. It's not quite as many like dinners.
Man, dress uniforms, lame.
Right, exactly. There's not so much, they're all in 10 forward watching someone play the trombone, watching Riker play the trombone. It's not quite as much there. Yeah, a little more action, a little more adventure. Now, granted, I'm always the guy who's going to go, if you can give me more Federation, I want more Federation. But now we're at this point where we're rebuilding the Federation. That's, as a Federation geek, that's very exciting to me.
Structure. I love structure.
As we're having our
presidential debates right now in the real world. You mentioned the I guess they're like sentinels or robots or the Wally looking things in the intro. Do we see one in this episode? I think we did. To me, it looked like it. After Stamets connected the thing in the Jeffers tube, it looked like it was hanging out, but how to get inside the ship?
Yeah, I think that's your like tool belt or something. I think that's your toolbox that floats along behind you. I'm not sure that's okay. Here's a deep cut, Flobo.
Hit me.
In the 80s, maybe the late 70s, there's a Fantastic Four cartoon, and they don't have the Human Torch. They have a robot named Herbie.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And it was because moms controlled Saturday morning cartoons so much that they knew that a man who was constantly on fire would upset little kids and their moms. So they replaced him with a cute little wisecracking robot named Herbie who drives Ben Grimm, the Thing, crazy. And that's what they look like to me. They look like little Herbies.
Thanks, Mom. You rooted for everyone.
Oh, and can I also throw in? Okay, so Stamets is the guy. I always remember him as the guy from Rent.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, there you go.
There you go, theater nerd. So he at one point, Jet tells him, "Take out your multi-tool and open up the hatch." And he takes out what I swear looks to me like the sonic screwdriver from Doctor Who.
It did, yeah.
Isn't that nuts?
It's all real.
So they've
all
got
the
their
timelines
own...
are collapsing onto each other. That's pretty much what happens.
Hey, they must have met some Gallifreyans at some point. That makes sense.
Hey, trading posts are what's all about in the future.
So I don't know. That was weird. I also thought the Transtatter, the telecommunications thing that they were trying to build, that looked an awful lot like these little robots too.
That's true. They have that kind of uniform shape.
I don't know. Maybe they're going to invent the robots. I just think it's the weirdest thing.
I think it's cool. We automate things we don't want to do ourselves. And, well, there's not many believers out there in space. But, my man, John Weber, it's almost time we land the USS Postshow. You know, Commander's Log, episode 2. We made it. Any final words, any parting shots? Hey,
man, I will be out there watching weird stuff so you don't have to. So I'll be watching more of these, ready rooms. I'm really enjoying it, actually. And hey, man, if you're not watching the show regularly, please tell us why. Because I'm speaking for both of us here, Flobo. I think we're loving this show more than we ever have.
Yeah. Not to make it about me and Hollywood me, but I do a lot of shows underneath my content umbrella, and doing this show is a passion project. It doesn't have to, I doubt I'm getting billions of views, but I love the show that much. I'd rather just do it and be the wrestling guy who does Star Trek. Why not? If they had an Archie comic show, I would definitely do that one too. But
oh hell, I would do that one. I love Archie comics.
Yeah, classic Archie, that Riverdale stuff. Okay, John Weber, where can the world find you and stalk you online, good sir?
Thank you so much, Flobo. Thanks for having me on the show. And folks, check me out on Twitter under Hello John Weber, and also Instagram. This handle works well for that. And just plain old John Weber on Facebook. Be nice to my mom.
Did you get that OnlyFans yet, or what?
What's that?
You get that OnlyFans yet?
No, I do not.
Fine.
If I did, it would just be me putting on more clothing rather than most people's OnlyFans where they're taking.
Man, whatever works to get those subscribers. It's your boy Flobito, flobito.com, flobito.com, youtube.com/FloboBoyce. And if you want to support the homie, go out there and buy a t-shirt at flobito.threadless.com. Thank you, man. I'm looking at it. Hey, we'll be back next week. John Weber and I. But until then,
live long and prosper, baby.